Hey, it's Ryan with this week's Mille Lacs Fishing Report. It's the beginning of September and water temps are in the mid-70s. Starting off with the muskie bite, not much has changed with the muskies and I don't expect to see many changes for a couple more weeks at least. What I would recommend doing during the day is, if it's going to be calmer, I'd fish deeper weed edges, cabbage in 10 to 14 feet of water. Look for the greenest cabbage that you can, that's the best this time of year. But I would go in and I would throw bucktails and I'd burn them fast, especially on a calm day. You can use smaller bucktails or larger bucktails, but typically what I do is I pick a darker color on a darker day and a brighter color on a brighter day. If you have some wind, I would move to the rock piles. One of my favorite things to do this time of year on a windy day is to go to wind-blown rock piles and throw crankbaits. I try to pick a crankbait that'll touch bottom, and I like to bounce it off the rocks and deflect it off cover, trying to provoke a strike out of sometimes lethargic fish. If you're going to be out trolling, I don't expect to see any changes out in the flats for quite some time now. Most of the trollers are doing anywhere from 4 to 6 miles an hour and trolling large baits, 10-inch plus. Try to find the biggest concentrations of bait that you can, and just hit points and edges of the flats, cover water, and eventually you'll tie into a big one. Moving on to the walleye bite, not a whole lot's changed on the walleye front either. I don't expect to see any big changes for at least a couple more weeks until we have a real considerable cool down. If I were going out walleye fishing on a calm, sunny day like we have behind me, I would fish one of two ways. I would either troll around and look for fish that are up off the bottom in deeper water, per se the mud flats or the gravel bars, and I would power cork those fish with a bobber and a leech, or I would troll lead core and try to cover some water. When trolling the lead core, it's important to maintain a certain speed to keep your baits at the same depth. So typically I'm going to pick a speed somewhere between 2 and 2.5 miles an hour, and I'm going to troll small baits at this time of year. Little number 4, Selmo hornets, shad wraps, and flicker shads. As far as colors go, something with a white belly, something with an orange belly, and something chrome. Between those 3 color schemes, generally you'll find one that outproduces the others. In the evening, I would move shallower. Some of my best bites I've had lately have been anywhere from 10 to 18 feet of water. What seems to be working best for the evening bobber bite is finding large rock and boulder that transitions to gravel. That seems to be where I'm doing my best with the bobbers and leeches at sunset. It's been working pretty well for us. We're putting fish in the boat, and starting now, we're going to be able to start keeping some fish too. So you should be able to get some fish for a fry, and it's been pretty fun right at dark. Moving on to the smallmouth, things are pretty similar with those. We haven't had any big weather pattern changes, so everything is pretty similar to how it's been the last couple of weeks. I'm noticing a lot of the smallmouth are starting to school up, even more so than they were a week ago. Noticing some pretty big schools of them the last couple weeks. I would recommend fishing the smallmouth if you're looking for a starting depth in about 10 to 12 feet of water, but I'm still finding them as shallow as 3 feet all the way out to 30 feet. And it really seems like just finding the correct structure is much more important than finding a certain depth. As far as the structure that I'm looking for, I'm just looking for big boulders, large masses of boulders, large single boulders, rock spines, long tapering points of large boulder. But wherever I can find big boulders seems to be where I find my best fishing. As far as baits to use, there's a couple different directions I've been going lately. The tried and true method of dragging bottom, whether it be a little jig worm, a small tube, or a Ned rig, any of those 3 will work. They catch fish. Green pumpkin's always a good color for that, but cast it out, let it sink to the bottom, and drag it back slow, real slow. That's a great way to catch fish, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Another technique that's been working really well for me is spy baits. And spy baits are pretty simple. They have their days where they really work great, and then there's a lot of other days where they don't work at all. But I always keep one tied up this time of year and at the ready. A day like I have going right now where it's calm and sunny seems to be the days where I really do good with them. Generally, when I'm fishing those, I'm fishing them anywhere from about 6 to 12 feet of water seems to be the best water for those for me in my boat. With the spy bait, all I do is cast it out and reel it in slow. I don't do any pauses, I don't jerk it or twitch it. I just cast it out, reel it in slow and steady, and some days it's a knockout. Hopefully these tips put some fish in the boat for you, and have a great weekend.